Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to the reality room. Please, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like our video, and drop your thoughts in the comment section. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the pertinent issue. We're going to be asking ourselves an important question, which is, will Donald Trump's new tariff make life more expensive for Americans? Let us watch these clips and come back for our commentaries.
Americans are having a real cost problem. And I think that some of that relates back to the tariff decisions. I think everybody has conceded that Americans actually end up paying the cost of President Trump's tariffs.
I don't concede that the tariffs went through to consumers. A lot of them were eaten by foreign companies. A lot of them were diluted in the supply chain. And the reason why they're going back, can I, sir, may I? The reason why they're...
You can't, because I'm the one who has the limited time here. You're here all day. If, in fact, it's not paid by the American side, it would make no sense to be making refunds. So just your behavior with tariff refunds proves the point that it's not just paid by foreigners or foreign governments or China or whomever. So good luck.
Is far too high. The Trump tariffs are adding thousands of dollars of additional expenses to everyday Americans. Right now, rents out of control. Right now, housing prices out of control. Right now, electricity bills skyrocketing. Right now, grocery costs out of control right now. And because of the Republican refusal to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, as Marjorie Taylor Greene herself has acknowledged, tens of millions of people are about to experience dramatically increased health insurance costs. How is that acceptable in the wealthiest country in the history of the world? It's not.
Let's just clear this one up. Ambassador Greer, have Trump's tariffs increased prices for American families?
Senator, no. Core inflation fell to 2.6% year on year, much better than in January 2025.
So you're saying that what the Congressional Budget Office and the Treasury Department's own numbers, that families are paying an average of $1,700 more. Are you saying your own Treasury Department and your own Congressional Budget Office just don't know what they're talking about?
Well, I'm interested in seeing what Treasury numbers you're talking about. No one's given them to me to look at, so I want to verify those.
Actually, they've been out there in public now for at least the last 6 months. They've been widely distributed because families are paying more. And there's no serious economist around the country, there's no serious person who looks at those numbers and thinks that families are doing better. Trump's tariffs mean that families have paid, on average, $1,700 last year.
Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed the clips. Let's dive right into the matter of the day. President Donald Trump has long argued that some countries have been benefiting from unfair trade practices that hurt the American economy. His administration says the new tariffs are intended to protect American jobs, encourage companies to produce more goods in the United States, reduce dependence of foreign manufacturers, strengthen America's position in the trade negotiations. Supporters believe these policies could help them in the domestic industries and create more manufacturing jobs over time.
Trump is back on the tariffs, my friends. Today, President Trump slapped 50% tariffs on all of these things coming into the United States from Canada. This list is 24 pages long. For the record, Canada is the United States' #2 trading partner after Mexico, so you know what this means. If these new massive tariffs take effect, inflation and all of our costs may go up again. Now, I know you're thinking, didn't the Supreme Court already say that Trump's tariffs were illegal? How is he doing this again? The fact is, the Supreme Court didn't say Trump could never impose tariffs ever again. The justices just said he couldn't impose tariffs using that one specific law. So today, Trump is using a different one. It's obscure, but it's still a law on the books. He's using Section 338 of the Tariff Act of 1930. That law authorizes the president to impose new or additional duties of up to 50% on imports or exclude them from entry into the United States entirely from any country that discriminates against U.S. commerce in a way that places the United States at a disadvantage compared with the commerce of any other foreign country. So in Trump's proclamations, which he signed in private today, he justified these 50% tariffs by saying that Canada imposed an unreasonable and unequal tariff system on U.S. autos, auto parts, alcohol, and cheese of all things, which Canada did not impose on other foreign countries. And that, in Trump's eyes, is discriminatory. Trump says that move disadvantages the United States and has resulted in a 22% drop of U.S. vehicle imports into Canada at a loss of about $5.5 billion and a decrease of about 81% of U.S. imports of alcohol into Canada for a loss of nearly $600 million. The proclamation says these 50% tariffs will take effect in 30 days on August 19th. But you may be wondering, why now? Why is this happening? Well, on Friday, President Trump threatened to impose more tariffs on Canada because of the wildfire smoke floating across the border, but today's proclamations don't say anything about wildfire smoke. But maybe that smoke was a catalyst to speed up today's announcement of all these new tariffs? I don't know. But what I do know is there is a hint about why this is happening buried in one of the documents from the White House today. It basically says Trump doesn't like that Canada imposed retaliatory tariffs on the United States immediately after Trump put tariffs on them. The document says over the past year and a half, only 2 countries have chosen to retaliate against President Trump's tariffs rather than negotiate a deal with the United States: the People's Republic of China and Canada. Curiously enough, President Xi Jinping of China, an adversary of the United States, is coming to the White House for a lavish state dinner next month, and Canada, our longtime ally, is now being slapped with 50% tariffs for the exact same behavior. Now, it's also important for you to understand, according to Trump's proclamation, this 50% tariff will apply to goods on that 24-page list that are supposed to be free of any tariffs under the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, the USMCA, that trade deal that Trump himself negotiated during his first term. Now, that's going to be a real issue. We have not yet heard from the Canadians, and it's unclear what this means for the future of the USMCA, which, by the way, is up for renegotiation this year. Now, I'm sure you want to know what items are going to be hit with this brand new 50% tariff. Well, they can be broken down into lots of categories, but I think the biggest ones that we will all feel are the tariffs that will be added to housing and construction materials like certain types of plywood and concrete, packaging items like plastic bottles, caps, corrugated boxes, things that get built into the cost of just about everything, flowers and gardening materials, certain food items like honey and dairy products, school and office supplies, some types of clothing, alcohol, and plastic kitchenware. Now, it's possible that these tariffs could be challenged in court and may be stopped. And it's also possible that President Trump is imposing these tariffs to try and give himself more leverage to change the terms of the USMCA when the negotiations begin. We'll just have to wait and see. But in the meantime, if you want to see this 24-page list of all these items, I'm going to email the documents out to you tonight in my Facts HQ email, which of course is free, so make sure you sign yourself up.
Currently have 3 months worth of inventory sitting at my factory that I cannot bring to the U.S. I have maybe 2 months worth left in my warehouse in Minnesota, and when that's gone, I have no more revenue. I cannot pay my employees. I cannot pay my bills. I cannot pay the loans which I have leveraged my house against, so we could lose our house. I do not have the $230,000 that were just immediately dropped in front of me to get my products into the U.S. So I am asking, begging for support from both sides of both parties to support our small businesses and get rid of these tariffs on U.S.-owned small businesses. It doesn't just affect me. When I go out of business, it affects all of those contractors that I pay to help me with my business, all those American-owned businesses, my trucking company that brings me my container, the bookkeepers and accountants and marketing teams that work with me. They now don't get to have the revenue they're getting from me, and I'm just one business that's at risk of going out of business. There are thousands of us. So this is hurting more than just people importing from China.
I think that one of the things that drives me the most crazy about this is that we have big companies like Apple who have a connection in the White House. They know who to call. They have the wherewithal to give $1 million to President Trump's inauguration ceremony. They get seated right up there on the dais on Inauguration Day when the people standing with us today have no capacity to accomplish that. And what happens? Apple gets a carve out, and these guys are left holding the bag. And that is wrong, and we cannot put up with it.
On the other hand, if tariffs lead more domestic production and job growth, some workers and communities could benefit from this in the long run. The overall impact will depend on how the policy unfolds and how businesses, consumers, and trading partners respond.
24th, President Trump's new tariff policy officially takes effect, and it's already sparking intense debate across the country. According to the administration, these permanent tariffs will apply to imports from 60 countries, with rates ranging from 10 to 12.5%. The White House argues the move is necessary to address forced labor and unfair trade practices. But not everyone is convinced. Many Americans are frustrated, worried that once again they could end up paying the price at the checkout counter. Economists and businesses are also watching closely because these tariffs could affect supply chains and put pressure on prices for everything from electronics and clothing to furniture and household goods. Supporters say it's about protecting American workers and holding foreign governments accountable. Critics argue the extra costs could eventually fall on consumers already dealing with high living expenses. One thing is clear. This isn't just another trade policy. It could reshape relationships with major trading partners and have a direct impact on the wallets of millions of American families.
The Trump administration announced a new round of global tariffs affecting dozens of countries, including Canada. But this comes as no surprise. These tariffs are meant to replace the ones struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court back in February.
These are tariffs that we have heard about in the past, and that they had been expected. You know, that context that you mentioned right off the top is really important, because right now there is that 10% global tariff that is in effect, and they were brought in after the U.S. Supreme Court struck down a wide swath of other tariffs, and they were imposed back in February, but there was always a set time limit for them. They were always set to expire, and that is going to happen tomorrow. So what the Trump administration is doing is they're bringing in these new tariffs under Section 301 of the U.S. Trade Act. And what they're saying is that they're slapping dozens of countries, including Canada, with these new tariffs because of forced labor practices, because these countries import goods made by forced labor.
In 2018, when we redid NAFTA, one of the new provisions we forced Canada and Mexico to take was their own prohibition on forced labor. So in USMCA, we obligated them to do that. A few years later, we're finding that they aren't actually enforcing that. So they're included in this action.
The U.S. saying that Canada does little to stop the import of those goods made with forced labor, but Canada has pushed back quite strongly, saying that they don't believe there's any basis for these Section 301 tariffs. In effect, it seems like there will be no change at all. And that's because this new levy would be a 10% levy, but goods that are already compliant with CUSMA, they would be exempt. So the vast majority of Canadian exports, they won't be affected. Really, this is just a different legal avenue for the U.S. to impose a new tariff on countries like Canada.
And while Trump promised to bring down prices on day one, the basics just keep getting more and more and more expensive. Trump's tariffs, his cuts to SNAP, his war with Iran have all made it harder and harder for families to be able to afford the increasing price of food. And the result is more and more families are having to put an item back on the shelf when they're at the grocery store. More and more parents having to skip a meal so that their kids can eat. More and more constituents telling me that they pull up their bank account on their phone while at their grocery store before they decide which essentials they can and cannot purchase. A new report from the Urban Institute finds that millions of Americans are drawing down savings or using buy now, pay later, or relying on payday loans just to afford their groceries.
Donald Trump's tariffs have already raised the prices on a bunch of goods. Economists at the St. Louis Fed ran the numbers, and as of the publishing date in October, the tariffs explained over 10% of the recent inflation, an average bump of around 0.9%. And when you actually look at it by category, pharmaceuticals and medical products are increasing in price the most. At the time, over a 4% estimated increase. Now they're talking about adding even more tariffs on medical devices and supplies under some national security investigation. They want to tax pacemakers, stents, insulin pumps, all of it. Hospitals will pay more, and then it gets passed on to insurance and then patients. That's higher premiums, higher bills, and the people who actually need this equipment, like seniors, veterans, and people with disabilities, are the ones who will feel it the most. A lot of them are on fixed incomes. This is not going to be great for their lives. Medical supply chains are specialized for a reason. You can't just move that production overnight. That could create shortages or quality issues. Tariffs just make things more expensive and unpredictable when people need reliability in this field. At the end of the day, tariffs are a tax we end up paying. Putting that tax on life-saving medical gear is completely irrational and immoral. Competition is needed to keep prices down. I know some people are concerned with China's competitiveness because they have a hostile government, but there are better ways to help our economy. Tariffs increase hostility while hurting our citizens. Instead, we can do things like cut taxes, red tape, and implement patent reform. There are many ways we can lower prices and increase competition. Tariffs on medical devices do not protect patients. All they do is raise the cost of staying alive.
Trump is now doubling the cost of some prescription drugs by putting a 100% tariff on any prescription drug that was manufactured outside of the US if the drug maker does not also produce drugs in the US. So drugs that people need to stay healthy, to stay alive, it might be the only drug that can help you stay healthy. The cost just doubled because of Trump's 100% tariff. I'm all for having more drug production in the US. I think that's great. But to put a 100% tariff on and double the cost of drugs that people right now, today, are using and relying on to stay healthy and alive is not the way. I have two bills in the governor's desk. One caps insulin copays at $35 a month. The other cracks down on pharmacy benefit managers, PBM, the drug middlemen of the healthcare industry who have an incentive to jack up the cost of prescription drugs because they make more money the costlier drugs are. What Trump is doing the exact opposite. It's part of his crusade to make life worse and more expensive for people. 100% tariffs on prescription drugs, not the way.
The question remains, will these tariffs strengthen America's economy in the long run, or will it make everyday life more expensive for millions of Americans? Drop your thoughts in the comment section, and please do well to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and click on the notification button so you don't miss out on any of our updates. Not forgetting, drop your thoughts in the comment section. Thank you for watching. See you in my next video. Bye.